Ces jours-ci, notre monde fait face à des défis de
These
toutes
days,
sortes.
our world has been
De plus en
facing
plus,
many
on voit
different
que la deuxième
challenges.
vague de COVID-19
We are seeing that
donne
the
la
second wave
difficulté
of
à plusieurs
COVID-19
pays d'Europe
is
et
causing a lot
d'ailleurs.
of difficulties
Le
in European
Royaume-Uni a
countries and
annoncé
elsewhere.
une nouvelle phase de
United
confinement.
Kingdom announced
La
a new phase
Belgique
of
et la
lockdown.
France
Belgium and
connaissent une
France
hausse fulgurante
have
des
seen a
hospitalisations.
significant
Leurs
rise in
infirmières et leurs médecins sont
hospitalizations.
épuisés,
Their
et leurs
doctors and
hôpitaux
nurses
sont débordés.
are
La
exhausted
situation
and
est
their
inquiétante.
hospitals are
Il faut la
overflowing.
prendre au sérieux.
The situation is concerning and we
The
need to
second
take it
wave of
seriously.
COVID-19 in places like the UK, Belgium, and France is a wake-up call that Canadians cannot afford to ignore. Right now, this virus is being given the chance to spread. It's being given the opportunity to grow. I know that's hard to hear, but the numbers are showing us that our window to turn this around is closing fast. We have to work together right now to beat the second wave. It won't be easy, but I know we can do it. Just yesterday, I spoke to Dr. Tam and to our caucus from Manitoba about what that province needs to do to deal with their latest surge in cases. On top of the federal support we've already provided, from the Safe Restart Agreement to the Safe Return to Class Fund, we're taking additional measures. Already, we've delivered to Manitoba over 90,000 rapid tests. Nationwide, the number is more than 2 million rapid tests shipped to the front lines. For Manitoba in particular, we're also providing federal support on contact tracing, modeling, and COVID-19 test processing. And we're shipping out PPE and working together on support for measures like isolation housing. There and right across the country, we will continue collaborating with all orders of government to keep Canadians safe. But governments can't do this alone. We need your help, too. So please, limit the number of people you see to what is absolutely essential. Download COVID Alert. 5 million people are now using this app. And keep wearing your mask, washing your hands, and staying 2 meters apart. I know it's tough, but it'll be even tougher if we give up now. We flattened the curve this spring. It's time to do it again this fall. Depuis le début, nous travaillons avec tous les
Since the very beginning, we've been working with the different levels of government in order to ensure Canadians' safety and to get control of the second wave. But we can't do this alone. So please, limit your in-person contacts to only absolutely necessary contacts. Also, please download the COVID Alert app. 5 million people are already using this app. Please continue to wear a mask, wash your hands, and maintain a 2-meter distance from others. I know that it is difficult, but it will be even worse if we give up now. We flattened the curve over the spring, and we can do it again this fall.
Over the last few weeks, I've been speaking with business owners across the country. And while this virus is no match for their resilience and creativity, I've heard how worried people are about the second wave. So on that front, we're taking yet another step forward. Today, I can announce that the CAN Export Program is pivoting to provide new support for small and medium-sized businesses on e-commerce, online platforms, and virtual trade events. There will also be additional resources to help business owners navigate COVID-19 trade rules and dedicated help for women and Indigenous entrepreneurs. Many small businesses have been able to stay open because they moved online. We want to grow that potential. Not only is this a great way to make sure that local shops can keep serving their neighbors, it's an opportunity to expand into global markets and rebuild a strong, resilient economy when the Canada brand is strong. Que ce soit ici ou sur les marchés mondiaux.
Whether it be here or on the global market, we will be here for Canadians throughout the second wave. Yesterday, the Deputy Prime Minister tabled a bill in order to implement our new targeted support measures for businesses that have been affected. This includes the new rent assistance program and support measures for isolation. This bill also includes extending the wage subsidy, which has been helping numerous employers and employees. I hope that all parliamentarians will support adopting this bill in order to help workers and small business owners. This pandemic has been difficult for small business owners, but it was also difficult for farmers. For the months to come, we will continue to be there for the men and women that help us put good food on the table. Today, I will be announcing an investment of $7.5 million in order to support Quebec farmers through the Emergency Fund for farm support. This is part of our $35 million investment in order to support farmers and to ensure the health and safety of Canadian workers and migrant workers throughout the country. Everyone deserves to be safe at work. Agricultural workers are there for us, and our government will continue to be there for them.
I want to end this morning by offering my deepest condolences to the family, friends, and CAF colleagues of Corporal James Choi, who we tragically lost over the weekend. We are here for you as you mourn this terrible loss. Those who knew Corporal Choi describe a dedicated, hard-working young man and a natural leader. He will be missed. As we mark the start of Veterans Week this Thursday, we'll have the chance to honor the service and sacrifice of Corporal Choi and of so many others. Our women and men in uniform have stood together in defense of a better world. Let's remember their legacy and do our part to carry it forward. This year, many remembrance commemorations have moved online, so go to veterans.gc.ca/Canada Remembers to join in. You can also pick up a poppy at a box in your neighborhood. They've set things up for touch-free donations, or create a digital version at mypoppy.ca. Cette semaine, particulièrement,
this week, we will be remembering the courage and the sacrifices of those who served and those who continue to serve our country. Their bravery gave us a better world, and they will continue to inspire us all. Thank you. I am now pleased to give the floor to Chrystia, the Deputy Prime Minister.
Thank you very much, Prime Minister. Yesterday afternoon, our government introduced legislation to put in place new support measures to help businesses get through the second wave of the coronavirus, to help them keep serving their customers, keep employees on the payroll, and get through to the other side. First, the new Canada Emergency Rent Subsidy, which will provide direct and easy-to-access rent and mortgage interest support directly to tenants and property owners until June 2021. The new rent subsidy will support businesses, charities, and nonprofits that have suffered a revenue drop by providing support up to a maximum of 65% of eligible expenses until December 19, 2020. Our legislation will allow for retroactive claims to September 27th. Deuxièmement, le nouveau programme de soutien en cas de confinement.
The new support program for isolation. This is an extra benefit of 25% sent through the Canada Emergency Rent Subsidy to eligible businesses that need to close their doors in order to limit their activities because of a public health order. This means that businesses that are specifically impacted could receive rent assistance of up to 90%. Many regions in our country are fighting a second wave, and so this support is so important for our businesses and our economy.
We are proposing new lockdown support This will provide an additional 25% through the Canada Emergency Rent Subsidy for qualifying businesses that are subject to a lockdown and must shut their doors or significantly restrict their activities under a public health order. Combined, this will mean that hard-hit businesses subject to a lockdown restriction can receive rent support of up to 90%. As much of our country is fighting a second wave of the coronavirus, this support is especially important now for our businesses and our economy. Third, the extension of the Canada Emergency Wage Subsidy until June 2021. This will continue to protect jobs by helping employers keep employees on the payroll and rehire their workers. The wage subsidy will remain at the current rate of up to 65% of eligible wages until December 19, 2020. Pour avoir une relance forte et durable,
In order to have a strong and durable restart, we need to do the right thing now for public health. Look around the world. Too many administrations thought that they would be able to fight coronavirus quickly and reopened too soon. And so the coronavirus was spread even more quickly. The money that was sent as a stimulus was in fact wasted, and the economy was even more hard hit than it needed to be.
And sustainable recovery, we need to be sure that we do the right thing now from a public health perspective. Just look around the world. There are too many places that, hoping the pandemic was beaten, rushed to open up too soon. The result was a resurgence of the virus, and the money that was pumped into economic stimulus was wasted, and the economy is being hit harder than it should have been. The business support measures that we introduced in Parliament yesterday are designed to support the difficult work of our public health officials and the agonizing decisions that they must make. If our public health officials believe that limited lockdowns are the best way for us to fight the coronavirus, the federal government will step in with additional support for affected businesses, as I have outlined. This is to help communities do the right thing and stay safe, and to help the affected businesses get through to the other side. This is the right thing for us to do, and it is the economically smart thing for us to do. I hope that all members of Parliament will support swift passage of this important legislation. Merci beaucoup. Mary.
Thank you very much. Mary, the floor is yours.
Thank you so much, Deputy Prime Minister. And this legislation, of course, is another step towards ensuring that our small businesses can make it through this crisis, as well as rebuild and to position us for an economic recovery. Bonjour à toutes et à tous. Helping Canada's small businesses go global is a key driver to helping our economic recovery. Our innovative and resilient small businesses across Canada continue to find ways to translate today's challenges into tomorrow's opportunities. And we can't start soon enough doing this. We need to be there to position them for that economic recovery. We need to create the right conditions for them to go globally. We need to give them the right tools to give them the support that they need. Aujourd'hui, comme l'a dit le Premier ministre,
Today, as said the Deputy Prime Minister, we are announcing new measures to help small businesses grow, all while navigating through challenges created by the pandemic.
our government launched the Can Export SMEs program, and to date, that program has helped thousands of small business owners and entrepreneurs break into international markets with funding of up to $75,000 to help them cover travel costs and other expenses. Of course, given the international travel restrictions that are in place because of COVID-19, and the increased importance of digital trade and just doing business digitally, the Can Export program is now pivoting. We're going to have this funding help businesses explore international opportunities in new ways. Number one, the support's going to help them develop and expand their e-commerce presence by covering partial costs for online sales platforms and digital strategy advice, as well as advertising and search engine optimization. Number two, this will help entrepreneurs and businesses attend virtual trade shows and other virtual business-to-business events. Number three, it'll also help small business owners navigate the new COVID-19 trade barriers by helping them pay for international market certifications and requirements. And as well, the Can Export now will provide dedicated support for Indigenous and women entrepreneurs to help them adapt to the economy of the future and to succeed in the marketplace amid COVID-19. So this revamped Can Export program will help hundreds of small businesses in the coming months sell their world-class Canadian goods, services, and technologies in the international marketplace, grow their business, and create good jobs for Canadians. So whether you're a female entrepreneur from Quebec, an Indigenous entrepreneur from Winnipeg, or a owner of a clean tech firm in BC, I encourage you to check out Can Export, learn how it can help you go digital and help you grow your business. And this week, starting tonight, I will be participating in Canada's first ever trade mission, virtual trade mission to South Korea. Out of the nearly 200 entrepreneurs and businesses joining me, including many female entrepreneurs, dozens are taking advantage of this new revamped Can Export program so that they can access those important customers in the international marketplace in South Korea and across Asia. Today's announcement builds on the work we have done for small businesses to help them rebuild, continue to bridge them to better times beyond COVID-19, and certainly with this support to help them do their business and to do their business globally. We will continue to listen, to adjust, and to respond to their urgent needs over the weeks and months to come. And now I will pass this on to our top doctors for an update on COVID-19. Merci beaucoup.
Bonjour à toutes et à tous.
Good morning, everyone.
240,263 cases of COVID-19 in Canada, including 10,208 deaths. Nationally, there are about 30,000 active cases across the country. And over the past week, labs across Canada have tested an average of close to 61,000 people daily, with 4.7% testing positive. Yesterday, a total of 3,422 cases were reported nationally, excluding Alberta, which has not yet reported weekend or Monday cases nationally. 741 of the new cases were backlogged from the weekend, and 2,681 were newly identified yesterday. This brings the average daily case count to over 2,900 cases. There are also increased numbers of people experiencing severe illness. Over the past 7 days, there were, on average, almost 1,100 people with COVID-19 being treated in Canadian hospitals, including over 215 in critical care and an average of 34 deaths reported each day. Canadians have sacrificed much in the months since the pandemic first began. We have come together to protect one another. Masks are one of the ways we protect each other. The degree of protection that non-medical masks provides varies with the construction, the number of layers, materials used, and most importantly, the fit of the mask. To improve the level of protection that can be provided by non-medical masks or face coverings, we are recommending that you consider a 3-layer non-medical mask, which includes a middle filter layer. To find more information on how to purchase or make and wear your non-medical masks for most effective use, read our updated guidance. It is important to remember that masks are an additional layer, and that core public health practices, including staying home if you have symptoms, hand washing, and physical distancing, remain vital protections. We know from the evidence in Canada and internationally that larger gatherings and indoor settings pose a higher risk for infection. The virus that causes COVID-19 spreads from an infected person to others through respiratory droplets and aerosols created when an infected person coughs, sneezes, sings, shouts, or talks. The droplets vary in size from large droplets that fall to the ground rapidly, within seconds or minutes, near the infected person, to smaller droplets, sometimes called aerosols, which linger in the air under some circumstances. This is why we have been advising Canadians to try to avoid the 3 C's: closed spaces with poor ventilation, crowded places with large numbers of people gathered, and close contact situations where you can't maintain physical distancing. This pandemic is teaching us a lot about being flexible and adapting to new challenges. Thank you.
Bonjour à tous et à toutes.
Hello, everyone. There have been 240,263 cases of COVID-19 in Canada, including 10,208 deaths. Nationally, there are about 30,000 active cases across the country. Over the past week, labs across Canada have tested an average of close to 61,000 people daily, with 4.7% testing positive. Yesterday, a total of 3,422 cases were reported nationally, excluding Alberta, which has not yet reported weekend or Monday cases nationally. 741 of the new cases were backlogged cases from the weekend, and 2,681 were newly identified yesterday. This brings the average daily case count to over 2,900 cases. There are also increased numbers of people experiencing severe illness. Over the past 7 days, there were on average almost 1,100 people with COVID-19 being treated in Canadian hospitals, including over 215 in critical care, and an average of 34 deaths were reported each day. Canadians have sacrificed much in the months since the pandemic first began. We have come together to protect one another. Masks are one of the ways we protect each other. The degree of protection that non-medical masks provide varies with the construction, number of layers, material used, and most importantly, the fit of the mask. To improve the level of protection that can be provided by non-medical masks or face coverings, we are recommending that you consider a 3-layer non-medical mask, which includes a middle filter layer. To find more information on how to purchase or make and wear your non-medical mask for the most effective use, read our updated guidance. It is important to remember that masks are an additional layer and that core public health practices, including staying home if you have symptoms, hand washing, and physical distancing, remain vital protections. We know from the evidence in Canada and internationally that larger gatherings and indoor settings pose a higher risk for infection. The virus that causes COVID-19 spreads from an infected person to others through respiratory droplets and aerosols created when an infected person coughs, sneezes, sings, shouts, or talks. The droplets vary in size from large droplets that fall to the ground rapidly, within seconds or minutes, near the infected person, to smaller droplets, sometimes called aerosols, which linger in the air under some circumstances. This is why we advise Canadians to avoid the 3 C's: closed spaces with poor ventilation, crowded places with large numbers of people gathered, and close contact situations where you can't maintain physical distancing. This pandemic is teaching us a lot about being flexible and adapting to new challenges. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. New. The Prime Minister will be available for 20 minutes of a question period. Minister Ng and Minister Freeland and doctors will remain available afterwards for questions, starting with the phone today. One question, one follow-up. Merci beaucoup, Dr. New. Le Premier ministre va répondre aux questions pour une durée de 20 minutes.
Thank you, Dr. New. The Prime Minister will be available for 20 minutes, and the other ministers will be available afterwards with the doctors to respond to your questions. Let's start with the phone. One question, one follow-up. We have until 12:45. Thank you. Operator, the floor is yours.
Thank you. Merci. Before we start, we please ask journalists to keep their questions for ministers and the medical team once the Prime Minister has left the room. To ask a question, please press *1 on your telephone keypad. Avant de poursuivre, nous demandons aux journalistes de bien garder leurs questions.
We would like to remind the journalists to keep their questions for the medical team and the ministers for the end after the Prime Minister has left the room. If you have a question, please press *1 on your keypad now.
The first question is from Christy Kirkup, the Globe and Mail. Line open.
Hello, Prime Minister. I'd like to ask you about another matter. Specifically, the RCMP had a July deadline to respond to the Civilian Review and Complaints Commission's report on its investigation into the death of Colton Boushie. It's now November, and there is still no response. So why are there not statutory requirements for the RCMP to respond to commission reports within a set time frame?
On a few different occasions, I was able to sit down with the family of Colton Boushie, and I assured them that we would get them answers on what happened. We are all awaiting this report, and I have asked Minister Blair to follow up on where this report is at and how quickly it can be released.
Following up.
Is there any hammer, though, that you could apply, Prime Minister, to ensure that there is a set time frame in which the RCMP can respond to watchdog reports? And how would you feel if this was your family awaiting answers?
Oh, I know directly from the Boushie family and from victims of incidents across the country that the wait is extremely difficult to find out answers. It interferes with the grieving process. It leaves gaping wounds that are difficult to fill. And that's why, as a society, we need to do better on getting those answers quickly to people. That's why I've asked Minister Blair to follow up on what is going on with this report and ensure that it is released soon. At the same time, I think there is reflection to be had on how to ensure that situations like this and delays like this don't happen again.
Merci. Opérateur, prochaine question téléphone.
Next question, operator on the phone, please.
Merci. Prochaine question, Raymond Filion, TVA. À vous.
Question from TVA. Thank you. Hello, Mr. Prime Minister. Mr. Macron called François Legault this morning in order to thank him for his support in defending freedom of expression. Have you spoken to Mr. Macron? And how do you respond to criticism saying that you are not defending freedom of speech enough? Answer. As I said Friday, acts of terrorism and acts of hate that we have seen in France are unacceptable, unjustifiable. There is no reason for such violence. That is what I have said, and it is what I will continue to say. As I have also said, we wholeheartedly support France. I have expressed my condolences. I've been working with Mr. Macron for a long time. We share a lot of values. We will always be there to fight terrorism, to defend our values, and to work to protect the environment, to protect women. We are great allies, Canada and France, and we will continue to be there for each other. Follow-up question. Just to be clear, are you condemning the publication of caricatures of the Prophet Muhammad? Answer, no. I think it is important to continue defending freedom of expression, freedom of speech. Our artists help us reflect and challenge our views, and they contribute to our societies, and we will always continue to defend freedom of expression.
Our journalists, our artists have an important challenge function in our society, and we need to leave them free to do their work. I have always believed that, and I've always said that.
Thank you. Operator, next question on the phone.
Thank you. Merci. Next question, Dylan Robertson, the Winnipeg Free Press. Line open.
Good morning, Prime Minister. Did Manitoba fail to prepare for the second wave of COVID-19?
My job is not to judge other jurisdictions and how they do things. My job is to be there to support them. We've sent over 90,000 rapid tests to Manitoba over the past little while. We've been there to send them more contact tracers, to give them more support on PPE, to help with isolation centers. We will continue to be there. Through the summer, we sent $19 billion to all provinces and territories to be able to deal with and prepare for a second wave. We sent we sent $2 billion to help with a safe return to class for our students in the beginning of September. We will continue to be there to provide the supports. Jurisdictions make determinations on how to act, and how to shut down, and where to shut down, and when to shut down. Our role as a federal government is to make sure that they have all the support and equipment necessary. As Minister Freeland pointed out, the decision by the federal government to be there with income supports for people who lose their jobs, with direct support for small businesses who are forced to reduce or to shut down, including help on rent with a top-up for when there are mandated shutdowns. These are all things that are designed to make it easier for public health officials in local jurisdictions to make those decisions quickly, to protect people's health, to shut things down and know that people will be there to support. People will be supported.
Following up.
And Prime Minister, the COVID-19 funding for schools in Manitoba still hasn't flowed. The provincial government says it hasn't actually received the funding and that it's supposed to ration that funding through the school year and not just the winter. I'm wondering if that's accurate or if Manitoba is being intransigent.
We have certainly moved very quickly to flow supports to the provinces. That $19 billion we transferred to the provinces in September for everything from protection to the most vulnerable, to extra PPE, to support for more testing, to support for municipalities is money that is available now for all provinces. And on the Safe Back to Schools, I know many provinces have moved forward in investing them, and we will follow up to ensure that Manitoba is able to do what is necessary to keep kids safe as they return to schools.
Thank you. Operator, we'll take one last question on the phone today.
Thank you. Merci. Prochaine question, Hélène Buzetti, Le Devoir.
Next question from Hélène Buzetti from The Devoir. Yes, hello, Mr. Trudeau. I would like to come back to my colleague's question, my colleague from TVA. It's not very clear to me. Did you receive a call from Mr. Macron like Mr. Legault? Answer. I express my condolences to France, and I imagine I will be speaking with the French President shortly. Follow-up question. So, you haven't received a call. Can that be seen as disagreement on his part with your position? Answer. I think that after such an attack like we saw in Quebec, there would be condolences shared. I have worked with Mr. Macron on important issues for everyone, and I will continue to work with him as an ally.
We have long worked together, the President of France and myself, on a broad range of issues that matter deeply to our citizens and to the world, whether it be fighting terrorism or standing up for human rights. We will continue to do that.
Merci. On va maintenant passer aux questions dans la salle.
We're going to move to questions in the room. Thank you.
Louis Blouin de Radio-Canada. Vous avez dit
Question
ce
from
matin à la
Radio-Canada.
radio
This morning you've said that the Americans' choice today could have an impact on this COVID crisis. How? Answer. Unfortunately, in the United States, there was a political debate on COVID-19, unfortunately. In Canada, we were extremely lucky that all the different levels of government took a harmonized approach. We worked together as partners, and we are all doing what we can in order to protect our citizens throughout the country. There were political debates regarding COVID there, and I think that is part of the challenge that the Americans are facing now. This has had an impact and will continue to have an impact on Americans' voting choice.
We are extremely lucky in Canada that all different orders of government and, for the most part, political parties have worked together to be there to support Canadians, to support our scientists and our frontline health workers, to work in a coordinated way to be able to fight this COVID-19 pandemic and continue to. In the United States, we saw that there was significant political debate around how to engage best with COVID-19, and obviously that is something that is at play in this election.
Bertrand Oliver with CTV National News. A few months ago, Ontario's premier encouraged anybody in the province who wanted a test to go get one. That created mass problems with testing. You and other officials have encouraged Canadians to get a flu shot. In Ontario, its estimated demand is up 500%, and supplies are very low or non-existent. I'm wondering what lessons your government is learning from these surges in demand that will ensure that Canadians who want a vaccine when it's available is able to get one, and also what is your government doing to increase the flu vaccine supply?
In regards to the flu vaccine, first of all, we encourage everyone and continue to encourage all Canadians to get that flu vaccine. We learned from other jurisdictions like Australia and New Zealand who face their flu season in the spring because their seasons are the opposite of ours, that the flu virus and the flu vaccine is an extremely important measure in terms of not doing any of keeping people healthier and preventing our frontline medical systems from being overloaded. We, as a result, ordered larger numbers of flu vaccine than ever before. Of course, we will continue to ensure that it is available for people across the country. We're working right now with Ontario to make sure that we are getting to them the necessary doses. Obviously, there's a strong demand for flu vaccine around the world right now, but Canada continues to ensure that we're going to have enough flu vaccine for everyone. And these are, of course, all lessons that we are keeping very close in mind as we move towards an eventual, hopefully sooner rather than later, rollout of vaccines once they are developed.
Michael Couture from Global National. I wanted to ask you, are you going to be watching the results of the U.S. election tonight? Possibly, will you be staying up late? And take me inside the room for a second. What are you or your office looking for in terms of results before you make that congratulatory call south of the border to either one of the candidates?
I think many people will be watching the elections tonight. I will certainly watch part of them, but we also know that there is a possibility that we won't know results until tomorrow morning or even later in the week or even longer than that. That is something that has happened before in terms of American elections. Many of us remember the 2000 elections that took a number of weeks before determining who would be sworn in January. We're going to continue to, watch and make sure we're standing up for Canadian interests every step of the way. But we will allow the American elections, obviously, to unfold as they will, and Canada will watch. Je pense que nous savons que
I think that we know that some elections take longer than others in order to get results. For example, in the year 2000, where we had to wait weeks before knowing who was going to be sworn in January. We are, of course, going to be watching what's going to be happening in the U.S. I will be listening to the results, but we know that we may not have the results before a couple days.
Tom Perry with CBC. I'd like to ask you also on the U.S. election. Do you think that the United States has changed over the past 4 years? And I wonder if you think if it has changed, if some of that change is going to stay permanent no matter who wins today or in the coming days.
I think over the course of years and decades, all of our countries change. There are ebbs and flows of different factors. There are choices made by American presidents that are the reflection of movements and expressions of will within the American people. These are all things that are important to Canada to keep an eye on, to watch for, to try to figure out how to best defend Canada's interests. Over the past 4 years, we've had to renegotiate our most important trade deal in NAFTA, and we were able to come through that very strongly. We needed to stand up for our steel producers, for our aluminum producers, and push back against unfair tariffs from the United States, and we were able to do that. We've continued to work alongside them in multilateral fora and on the world stage, and we will continue to do that. Obviously, elections matter, and we will watch the results of this one, but Canada is well positioned and ready to continue to work with the American people and the American government, regardless of the outcomes of tonight.
Answer repeated in French. I think that we all know that countries evolve and make different choices for different elections. Our responsibility in Canada is to defend our interests and our values, and that's what we've been doing for years. For the past 4 years, we've defended trade with our most important partner. We renegotiated NAFTA, and this yielded good results for Canada. We were able to defend our steel and aluminum workers against unfair tariffs imposed by the U.S., and they were removed by Americans. We will continue to be there to defend our interests, regardless of the results. That's what Canadians expect of us.
Good afternoon. I'm curious, over the summer it seemed that you were winding down some of your aid programs for COVID-19, and now we're starting to see you ramp them back up again. I'm wondering if maybe the information you were giving wasn't predicting the second wave to be as bad as it is, and that's what's changed it, and if you have any sense of how many jobs or businesses these new measures will actually prevent from closing.
Well, we knew throughout the summer that it was going to be important to keep things adjusted. In the spring, the Canada Emergency Response Benefit was designed to keep people at home, to keep them safe, because that was what we knew needed to happen. With a national shutdown, we needed to be there to support people as they stayed home. But we knew as the summer rolled out that people were getting back to work, people were starting up again, and we needed to make modifications to better support with slightly more fine-tuned tools the reality that people were facing, which is why we announced through the summer that we were going to be extending the wage supports to the fall, right to Christmas. Even though we didn't know for sure that a second wave would come, we had a feeling that it would be necessary, and therefore we did. And even before that second wave hit, we've announced that we're going to be extending our supports until next summer. But those supports, as the Finance Minister and Deputy Prime Minister has pointed out, are adjustable. We know that different businesses are hit differently. Some businesses are doing very well despite the pandemic, from being able to pivot, from being able to respond, from being able to be creative about their responses. Others, no matter how creative they get, are going to be suffering because of the nature of their businesses. Therefore, we have to have more flexible tools to both encourage people to work when they can, but recognize that many people won't be able to, and provide the right mechanisms, which is why a switch towards EI was the right movement. But also for our business supports, understanding that different levels of supports will be needed for different industries and different businesses. That's why we've given the predictability to next summer. One of the things we're seeing around the world right now is people are having to restart programs that they had let stop, or they had stopped perhaps too early, and that's causing a little bit of confusion and extra difficulty. Canada never stopped supporting small businesses. Canada never stopped supporting our vulnerable Canadians and Canadian workers. That's the commitment we made to Canadians from the very beginning of this pandemic, and that's the one we hold to. We have your backs for as long as this takes, whatever it takes. The Government of Canada will be there to support Canadians until the end of this COVID pandemic. That is the commitment we made. That is what we're going to continue to do.
And Prime Minister, do you mind if I jump in?
Of course, Christia.
I would just like, if you guys don't mind, to sort of build on what the Prime Minister has said. And just to say, I disagree with the premise, part of the premise of the question. Our government absolutely has understood that coronavirus wasn't over in the summer. And as the Prime Minister has just said, we knew we were going to need to continue to be there for Canadians, for Canadian workers, for Canadian businesses, for Canadian provinces and territories. And we knew we needed to be there for a second wave. That's why, as the Prime Minister has said, we put in place the very generous support in the Safe Restart Agreement for provinces and territories, $19 billion. That's why another $2 billion has gone to support the safe reopening of schools. And crucially, as the Prime Minister has said, that's why in the summer, in August, we announced our intention to extend the support for Canadian workers moving into the EI platform, and with the new CRB benefits, that support would last until the fall of 2021. And that is why we announced in the throne speech that the wage subsidy would extend to the summer of 2021. So we have understood that we need to be there for the long haul. And the business support measures that we put forward in Parliament yesterday are about doing precisely that. And what the Prime Minister has just emphasized is, in order to be there for the long haul, we've created this real network of mutually reinforcing measures that are simplified, that are built on robust platforms, that are going to get us through to the summer and the fall. The EI and the new emergency benefits, they're already there. They had unanimous support in Parliament. And now we have this suite of business support measures: wage subsidy, rent subsidy, lockdown support, enhancement to CEBA. These measures all work together. They are delivered on robust platforms. They've been simplified so that they are mutually reinforcing. As the Prime Minister said, they are flexible and automatically adjust. So we will be spending more on EI and more on the CRB and more on the wage subsidy and more on the rent support if it turns out that the second wave is really, really rough and people need more support. If we get through it, if we do the right thing, if we listen to Dr. Tam and Dr. New, and we're all able to keep working, then we will spend less on these programs. They are automatic stabilizers. So we've really worked hard to put in place a set of measures that work together, that are simplified, and that crucially will get us through to the summer and the fall.
Thank you, Deputy Prime Minister. Prime Minister, this is all the time you have with us today. Thank you very much. We will now go back to the phone for 2 questions and finishing up with the room for 12:45. Thank you. Opérateur, prochaine question au téléphone, s'il vous plaît.
Next question on the phone, operator.
Merci. Prochaine question. Next question, Dylan Robertson, the Winnipeg Free Press. Line open.
Hi there. A question for Dr. Tam. I wanted to ask about the use of antigen versus PCR rapid tests. Is there a different criteria of when these should be used in general? And as a theoretical, when you have a remote communal workspace with an existing outbreak, is an antigen test adequate for screening positive cases?
So PCR is the sort of standard, if you like, the gold standard for testing. And so, but, you know, to augment that capacity, antigen testing can be done if, particularly in places where there's not enough access to laboratories. So any kind of rapid point of care test, that's you know, key attribute. And if you already know there's an outbreak, you can use, I think, an antigen test to support that outbreak response and try and detect individuals who may be part of the cases that need to be isolated. So I think that's useful. Of course, negative tests, depending on your epidemiologic situation, may not tell you a lot. You still have to use public health judgment in those situations as well. But I think antigen testing can supplement the outbreak response. And that long-term care, maybe outbreak and work settings, that's one of the you know, potential uses. But in general, if you want to have precise diagnostics, then we advocate the use still of the PCR.
Thank you. No follow-up.
Thank you, Dylan. We'll go to opérateur. Prochaine question au téléphone.
Next question on the phone, please, operator.
Thank you. Merci. Prochaine question, Lina Dib, La Presse canadienne.
Question from La Presse Canadienne.
Bonjour. So my question is for you, Dr. Tam. I don't quite understand why have you changed the directive of the masks now that they need to be 3 plies, 3 épaisseurs. Could you explain where the science comes from and what will we do with all these masks that are produced now, sold and worn? Should they all be sent to the garbage and we start over?
Yes, so we're not necessarily saying just throw out everything that you have. I think nobody's really studied non-medical masks in the past. So there's been actually more research into different materials, the number of layers, and particularly the fit. And I keep emphasizing the fit is one of the most important things. I see many of people in this room actually has a very good, well-fitted mask. You know, it's pinched at the nose. It fits all around your mouth and your nose. And it has to cover your mouth and your nose. So that's really important. And we already have recommendations on materials for the 2-layer mask. But it's more and more recommendations, even internationally, that adding another layer of what we call a filter layer could add to that protection. So it's an additional layer of protection, particularly if you have high-risk medical conditions and other risk factors. Then adding another layer of protection, I think particularly important right now as we're all moving inside. I think any additional layer of protection we are now recommending. The filter that we are talking about can be inserted into the 2 layers of, if you had cotton, you know, tight weave cotton, it can be inserted in the middle. Or there are actually other constructions that will be on our website. For example, one of the kind of filter materials is non-woven polypropylene, which is like an interface. I don't know if people who sew, I don't, but now I've learned about interfacing. That kind of material can be inserted and ironed on, for example, and as part of the construction can then be reused. You can also buy some filters that are available. So this is an additional recommendation just to add another layer of protection. But I have to say that the science of masks has really accelerated during this particular pandemic. So we're just learning again as we go. But I do think that because it's winter, because we're all going inside, we're learning more about droplets and aerosols. It's just another layer of protection.
C'est Dr. Peut-être c'est Dr. peut-être ajouter quelque chose aussi en
This is
français.
Dr. New. I may
Dr. Tam a
just
constaté,
add something in
même le port
French.
d'une masque, c'est comme une couche de
As Dr.
protection.
Tan said,
Mais
wearing
c'est
a
aussi
mask
important de
is a
garder
layer
les
of
autres,
protection,
les autres mesures de
but
santé publique
it's important to
éprouvées
keep
comme la
other public
distanciation
health measures
physique et
in mind,
aussi
for
le
example,
bonne hygiène
physical
de se laver les
distancing
mains. Donc,
and frequent hand washing. Even through wearing a mask now, we know through data and science that is evolving that it might be good to add even another layer to wearing a mask, adding a filter. And another important message to add is that with winter that's starting here in Canada, it's a good idea to wear a mask indoors for any occasion, unless you're home with people from your household. If you have guests in your home, it's important for everyone to wear a mask indoors. It's only with members of your household that you can have contact without wearing a mask. Thank you.
Dr. Tam, if I can go back to the science that you were talking about. So are you saying that this filter will protect against the aerosols, or you're not going there?
Well, it will increase different ways of catching droplets of different sizes. So, it may not filter everything, but a well-fitted non-medical mask will filter a lot of the different droplets of different sizes. So that increases for sure. It will increase another layer of filtering out those droplets. So that is one of the reasons. So scientists have, used different combination of things in different layers. In general, the more layers, potentially, the better if you use the right materials, but it also has to be breathable, and comfortable and well-fitted. So that's why these recommendations continue to evolve. I mean, you can put many layers, but then it won't be as breathable, and then people can't use them. So this is the latest recommendation. But I do have to emphasize the fit. The fit is a really important aspect of the whole setup. But as Dr. News said in French, that this is one layer of protection. You have to observe all the other public health practices. One difference, another thing that we want to emphasize today is that just also to make things simpler, when you're coming indoors, never mind 2 meters, however meters, just wear the mask when you're not with people in your household. That will help prevent droplets or aerosols more so than if you were just relying on the 2-meter distance, again, adding another layer. So, but it does actually simplify the message. Many jurisdictions, municipalities have already said, wear a mask indoors, in indoor public spaces. So it's the same thing. So when you go out, put on your hat, your gloves, bring your mask, wear it when you're not with your household. That's the simplest message.
Thank you. We will now go back to the room, starting with Monsieur Blouin.
Une question pour Madame Freeland de
I have a
Louis Blouin, ici de
question
Radio-Canada.
for Ms. Freeland. Louis Blouin
Vous avez
for
beaucoup
Radio-Canada.
vu de proche la relation canado-américaine,
You
ce qui se passe aux États-Unis depuis
closely
les
saw
dernières années. Est-ce que vous craignez
the
des
relationship between
débordements,
Canada and the
des
US
violences en
in the
marge
past few
du
years?
scrutin? On a vu que le
Are you
climat est
worried
très, très
about
tendu aux
violence?
États-Unis. Qu'est-ce que vous
The
auriez
climate
peut-être à
is
dire
very
aux Canadiens qui
tense
sont aux
in the
États-Unis en
US.
ce moment,
What do you
peut-être,
have
qui
to say to
s'inquiètent?
Canadians
Qu'est-ce que
who
vous
are in the
pouvez nous
US
dire là-dessus?
who are concerned at the moment? What can you say? Answer. Thank you for the question. Yesterday, I had an excellent discussion with Kristen Hillman, our ambassador in the United States. I have one thing to say. I want to reassure all Canadians in Canada and Canadians in the United States that the government of Canada is ready. Our government has different specialties. One of them is knowing how to work with the United States. We know and understand that it's up to the Americans to choose their government, but it's up to the government of Canada to know how to work with the government that is chosen by Americans. Over the past 4 years, I think we've shown that we know how to work with the U.S. I would like to reassure Canadians that we have plans for any possibility. We will continue to be ready. And one of the responsibilities for Canada is to be there for Canadians who are abroad. And we will be there to support them. Thank you.
En anglais, peut-être, Madame Freeland?
Can you repeat that in English, please?
Okay. Thank you for the question. I had a very good conversation yesterday with Kirsten Hillman, our terrific ambassador to the United States. She's our woman in Washington. And I really would like to assure Canadians today that our government is absolutely ready, and we have thoughtfully prepared for all eventualities. And I am really confident that we have a plan no matter what happens. I think it's a reality for Canada that every Canadian government needs to be a specialist in working with the United States, and that has certainly applied to our government. I think over the past 5 years, our government has shown that we are able to work with the United States, whoever the American people choose to govern the United States. And I really want to assure Canadians that, just as we were ready when we came into office in 2015, just as we were ready in 2016, we are ready today. We absolutely respect the choice that the American people are making today, and we will be ready to work effectively with whomever they choose as their government. You asked specifically about Canadians in the United States, and that's a good question. It is absolutely a responsibility of our government to be there for Canadians outside our country, and we'll be there for them too. Thank you.
Ma question de suivi, Madame Freeland.
My follow-up question, Madam Freeland. What is the risk for the Canadian economy if, for example, the results are contested for the American results? If this spreads over weeks, if this decision is undermined by a candidate or another, what is the risk for Canadians? Answer. This is another good question. Our relationship with the United States is so important. We have done a lot in order to maintain these relations in the future with the new NAFTA. This gives us a guarantee as a country that we will have stable and beneficial agreements in place for Canada. I would like to quote an economic report from TD Bank. It was published a few weeks ago. It was an analysis of the state of the Canadian and American economies, and it also had to do with our response to the coronavirus. The bank noted that, and I will quote it in English, I think there's a line that all Canadians know.
Canada catches cold. Mais les économistes de TD Bank ont constaté que
TD Bank economists have noted that now that we're looking at the economic restart in Canada and the US, and when we look at the reality of an economic restart regarding jobs, well, that's more robust in Canada than in the United States. TD Bank economists stated,
when the United States sneezes, Canada develops antibodies. Et je pense que
I believe that this is an important approach for our country. It's very beneficial to us to have a free trade agreement with the United States and to be neighbors with the biggest economy in the world. It gives us a lot here in Canada, but at the same time, it's important to have diverse economic relations in the world. Mary is working very hard to create these new ties, and we need to do that. Thank you.
Thank you, Deputy Prime Minister and Minister of Finance. We have time for one last question in the room before ending this presser. Thank you.
Hi, my question is for Dr. Tam or Dr. New. Either one of you can answer. Ottawa's top public health officer is telling residents that we really need to learn how to live with the virus. And she's suggesting that includes a loosening of restrictions on indoor dining and other quote unquote more controlled settings where people can gather. Now, this message is coming as many European countries enter a second national lockdown to try to get control over this second wave. So I'm wondering, what do you think about this idea of coexisting with the virus? And also, I'm wondering if you can kind of explain why it appears that guidelines are changing from encouraging people to stay at home and to only leave for essential reasons to go out but be cautious when it seems like cases are still rising in many provinces.
Yeah, I think we stressed that each of the local public health officers may need to adjust to what's going on in their environment. So I think adapting to, living with COVID-19 is something that we have to do, because it's not going to immediately disappear, and the population doesn't have much immunity. So we know that. And so these adaptation, adjusting our lives, developing some of these habits like wearing a mask and observing these public health measures, I think is as I said this morning, is a sort of habit that we need to sort of develop. Businesses have to adjust and see what they can do to minimize risks. It's a bit like a sort of harm reduction approach, if you like. And in some businesses or in some jurisdictions, it may be working. I don't know, because I actually think that even within Ontario, there's different municipalities that experience different events. And they may have different capacities to ensure that restaurants are complying as well. So there may be a lot of different considerations. So Dr. Etchers obviously knows her municipality better than any of us would, and she is advising accordingly. So I think it's a matter of adaptation and seeing if it would work. But if cases do occur and accelerate in a community, then you have to get at it early. Because if you let the virus and the numbers accelerate and keep accelerating and then act, you would then end up with more widespread closures. So I think as cities or hotspots cool down, if you like, the restart needs to be carefully thought of. And then the next time, if there was any acceleration, you've got to titrate your community transmission activities. I think one reason why I think each of us have to develop good personal habits is to be able to keep some of these spaces open. So if we all reduce the overall contacts that we have and reduce the viral activity and the viral load in your community, then some of these spaces could potentially open as well. So it's a bit of a balance, and we just said it's a very difficult balance. But if everybody do their part, there's actually an increased probability of returning to some of those previous activities.
Hi, we're going to get one more question. Tom Perry with CBC. I just had a question about, Dr. Tam, about your guidance on the three-layer masks. I was just looking at a WHO statement that came out in June, and it said, and this was about general mask wearing. It said, based on new research, WHO advises that fabric masks should consist of at least 3 layers of different materials. So are what you're saying today different than what they said in June?
No, I think it's in line with that recommendation. And, and it's about also not just the number of layers, but the different materials. There's been, increasing research on the types of materials as well. The CDC, I think, says 2 or more. So there's different sort of permutations, I think, of an alignment in recommendations. But it's an area of evolving science. So I think just to forewarn that maybe we'll have another, evolution in knowledge in a number of weeks or months as well. So, and we will, but our approach also in Canada is to consult as many people as we can and make it practical. The timing is important, I think, because of returning to indoor spaces. And as we learn more about the different sizes of droplet, the more layers that you have is going to filter out more of those droplets as well. So that's why I think at this time we are evolving our recommendations along with the context and the evolving science.
Thank you. This is what ends today's presser. Thank you very much, everyone, ministers and doctors.
Okay, quite a few announcements there from both the Prime Minister and government officials, but perhaps the most interesting takeaway is from Dr. Theresa Tam saying they're now recommending Canadians wear 3-layer non-medical masks. Let's bring in CBC's Janice McGregor, who is listening in. Also, Janice, what did you make of that?
Yeah, so you heard the journalists there pushing back. Are you saying we should all throw out our old masks and get entirely new ones? And, is this really different from what the